from their faith perspective, well, understanding ours, but allowing for that and attention, as we just had, of discussions and disagreements. That's excellent. How do we be inclusive and humbly make for safe spaces to talk? That's another part of this discussion. And then behaving with the standards and guidelines, but then allowing for what is consistent. So that's something to keep in mind as you wrestle with how do you make faith engagement a positive part of what you do at Andrews. Okay, I'm just going to read this. I'm not asking for discussion right here, but I think it's something to keep in tension. Andrews University is a Seventh-day Adventist school university, and this I think is a summary statement that talks about what is the bigger picture of Adventist idea, definition, give it. One of the clearest I find of what is faith integration is this. So, defined here as a deliberate and systematic process of approaching the entire educational enterprise, both curricula and co-curricula, from a biblical perspective. In a Seventh-day Adventist setting, its aim is to ensure that by the time a student completes their studies, they will have freely internalized beliefs and values and a view of knowledge, life, and destiny that is Bible-based, Christ-centered, service-oriented, and kingdom-directed. Now, we can talk about and disagree about the extent to which they have freely internalized. We would like them to have embraced and made choices about those beliefs. Whether they embrace Adventist ones or not, we feel welcoming of their choice otherwise. So we just say I'd add that caveat to that, but have we positively, contagiously talked through why and had deep discussions about and respectful discussions about faith. So that's the deep underlying view of what faith integration we would consider in our mission at Andrews. And the last frame I want to share is one that to me was valuable as you think about, well, there's not one way to help students engage with faith. As many of us, if we recognize that our relationship with God is perhaps the most significant, not the how, but our relationship, it's also helpful to see there are different traditions, but these are types or approaches of faith integration that the Azusa Pacific University has in a very insightful guide. You may want to write that down. Azusa Pacific Faith Integration Faculty Guide. If you just search for that online, you'll get it. It's an amazing, concise guide. It's about 50 pages long. But I don't want to go into each one of these, but I can tell you that each one of these approaches or types of faith integration were found as we looked at Andrew's syllabi, mission statements. So we have our gifted and talented faculty looking at how God works and wrestling with faith and faith foundations in their discipline in many different ways. So I found this to be useful, maybe pushing you to think, oh, well, really, I have thought about that, but maybe that's another approach in the discussions I have when I get to this topic or this subject. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Because if you think of the psychological terminology of Gestalt, the truth is the whole of how we understand and build our relationship with God is more than the sum of its parts. And I, in my class, am only going to come to helping students know one part. I humbly am delighted there are others who are going to fill in gaps. So I don't know if you can take a moment. Can you see the two parts of each of those pictures? Do you have that focus flexibility? I think that's something too, just the idea of can you shift your focus and see someone else's point of view in a disagreement or in looking at face. So I come to the next part of what we're going to do here together. So thankful that several colleagues who are also equally busy right now jumped in and said, yes, I can share some of what I'm doing. I don't do justice in giving them just a few minutes each, because each I'm sure could give a whole hour or more sharing some of the things they do. But I wanted us to leave today with the variety of ideas, because the sum of the whole is larger than just the parts. So I'm going to start with three contributions of three faculty who are not here today, and then the others that are here. So Andrew Rice teaches for us from the West Coast. He's actually a full-time employed at Walla Walla University and stationed at Rosario Beach, does a lot of the practical field work. And he teaches our undergraduate ACE, or general education. This is the class that most of our undergrad adults love to do. It's easy to do the labs in this class using things that are available at home, and it stretches their thinking in many ways about the whole issues of stewardship of the environment, etc. So he gave me some examples. I picked these few. I'm not going to read them out loud. Go ahead and read them yourself. Just some examples of how he finds ways through his weekly emails online. We ask each teacher to have, in addition to what's set up in the Learning Hub, just that connection, like your mini lecture on the start of the week. This is what we're going to do this week, guys, and remind us about other things. So take a moment to just read those. Or for the video, actually, I'm going to change my mind. For the matter of people listening in, I will read them. Do I have a volunteer to read for you? Would you like to read it for us, please?
Everything is okay?
Yeah.
So the email says, we're also told in scripture that the earth waxes old like a garment, Isaiah 51:6. This is the result of sin, and the only remedy is the new earth recreated. We're learning a lot here in our environmental science class, which can help us be better stewards. As God's second book, nature, that we should care for it, but not at the expense of trampling on God's laws. Capstone paper, great substantive, thoughtful discussion of personal worldview and Christian perspective, reflecting on the thoughts perhaps formulated while being under stress. Respective agnostic theistic positions and encourage continuing to seek the truth, including examples to references to truth and lies in Scripture. In prayer, the students express appreciation for instructor Andrew Rice's prayers in difficult times.
Thank you. The second one, I take responsibility. Those were notes. But Judith gave an example there with respect to agnostics. And while sometimes I have persons who, in their paper, have positions that I respect, and then he said, but I was able to have a healthy dialogue and give back some ideas and create a conversation, which goes along with our plenary speaker today. You know, what you do with the students, you use them as opportunities to help that student grow. I would say I find the online environment wonderful in that respect, because you may not have to deal with the tension in a room of perhaps derogatory against others in the room, but in a discussion forum online, they can get their way, and you're going to have to be careful and moderated. But in individual papers, where they're writing, and there's one in a class that's an asynchronous class, you're dealing with students one-on-one. So you can go deeper and more specific with those individual students. So that is one benefit there. Okay, that's just one example from environmental science. Brian Urais teaches for our English department, and he teaches those foundational college writing classes. I was fascinated with some of the things he shared. It just made my heart feel good. This is what's happening in an English class. These are some of the questions he asks in the weekly forums. How does rhetoric fit into the life of a believer? How can a Christian use rhetoric in their walk of faith? And they have to share and converse in a forum. Think about your religious literacy. How was your faith, religious literacy, etc., sponsored for you? What does it mean to be sponsored in religious literacy? We have to unpack that in How many activity systems can you think of that use the Bible as a tool? How are the motives of these systems simple or different? Do you belong to these systems? Do the uses of the Bible in these systems differ? And so, how do these varying uses of the Bible affect the system's goals? And we need to concept of the past to unpack that. But can you see there's some fairly deep thinking? Students can pull in to think about the topics, even at a class that's traditionally taught for freshmen and sophomore at college level. Okay? He talks about starting his emails with a blessing. Really, I pray for you this week for that. A really interesting phrase, just to show us of how you would word a section. I pray for you. And then give the biblical encouragements, he said, individually as well. He keeps a prayer chapel open in his classes, and in the Zoom tutoring, he does one-on-one with students. In their writing classes, each student has to have either 2 or 3 individual meetings for that feedback and tutoring. So he has the ability to pray for them and talk about about their whole life for a few minutes and engage, build that trusting relationship with students. And then he talks about modeling, because faith is essential to his life, the impact it has. Okay, Penny Webster shares as recently retired psychology adjunct faculty. And I'm going to just pick one from this page to share, but in every week she has, I thought it was hard to choose which one. And she draws the attention to the controversy in looking at theories of psychology and the evolutionary perspectives, and says you may want to think about this, and they have readings in the sections to talk about and think through things from a biblical perspective as well. So I'm going to read the second bullet on this list. Consider the importance of spiritual nurture and guidance, especially in infant and childhood development. Something not included in our chapter. Note the emphasis Ellen White placed on these very early years, and she includes a quote and goes on to discuss it. I ended with just a quote here. The lessons learned, the habits formed during the years of infancy and childhood have more to do with the formation of the character and the direction of the life than have all the instruction and training for the after years. And then she encourages students to talk about that. So drawing in and using a textbook base, which was chosen, I believe, in that course with a Christian perspective as well, but thinking critically. I'm going to choose to skip this one because I want to end with this. So all through every week they have both the introductory emails and then the formation, the discussion forum has something that invites them to talk more about it, and then the capstone final paper has 3 or 4 bullets, 2 of which here are: how does what you've learned in Psych 101 relate to a broader, deeper understanding of how fearfully and wonderfully you are made? That theme runs through, she mentions it in many chapters. How can you apply what you've learned to help you relate better to others, to deepen your connection with God and your neighbors? I spent quite a while thinking about some feedback that came from this class. Some of my adult students have told this teacher, I learned more about faith in your psychology class than in my religion major classes. So I said, okay, what is it here that I'm missing? So I asked her for all her notes. I wanted to see and really research. And the reality was every week there was intentionality in thinking about the faith connections. And a very big piece, I think, was this, the connection to where you are. How do you apply it to your life? And that's what andragogy tells us about teaching adults effectively, is that they have experience that may actually bring a lot to the class. We have to be humbly saying, this is what I'm teaching you, but you may have more that adds, that gestalt, and some of the whole parts, and allowing them to make those connections will make the class so much more valuable and enrich the experience of everyone in the class. So for an adult learner, let them participate and connect, and that will bring to a rich faith. And I'm going to let Charity carry on, and she's got some good points about, I think, segueing into there. What do you do to help give people space? There you go.
So I don't know about you all, but maybe you have in our online course the little section that says chapel or prayer garden or whatever. Does anybody use those very often? My students don't use those.
Ours undergrads don't either, so
And
so that up.
we looked at that and we said, how can we create that community and that space within our classrooms? And I teach undergrad and I also teach graduate, but specifically within our graduate classes and the adult learners. I've come up with a way to look and provide a scriptural reference and or an Ellen White quote and say, hey, this aligns with the topic for this week. And so I provide that to them. We meet synchronously, live via Zoom. So then I put them in breakout rooms. I just give everything. I give them time. It was a little bit of an experiment the first time. You're like, and I don't know what they're doing. Right? So it was a little nerve-wracking, but what was great about it is when it really came to, we did it once when I was like, okay, let's do a check-in, like on a scale of 1 to 10, like how valuable was this experience? Everybody everybody was a beta rat after the first time. So I checked in like every 2 classes after that to see like, is this really sticking with the value? And it consistently focused in that and is. And at the end of the course and all the course survey work, I would spend a little bit of the last class doing like a focus group of like, okay, what could be changed, that sort of thing. And I said, what absolutely should be changed? This activity of me providing some focus and direction so that it was course aligned, but then stepping back and just giving them the space to examine that. And it had significant implications because I teach teachers of what does this look like when applied in your professional life, right? Or in your personal life that spills over to your professional life. So it's very application oriented, and that was the one spiritual piece, spiritual development piece, because please don't ever change that. This was huge. This was community building, this was faith building, and so on. And that kind of goes along with how we set up our course. So this morning, in our keynote speaker talked about having some form of like social norms or how we do that work. We do that through our social contract, but because we teach it at Adventist University, as we go through that social contract process, I actually ask them, we say we're going to have disagreements. Some of those are going to be intellectual disagreements. Some of those may just be disagreements with the grade, right? So whatever those form of disagreements, we need to decide together how we're going to handle those. And I have some ideas that are there, but they interact and we conversate through them. And then we take a step back. I'm like, okay, we're going to put it up there. It's a live Google Doc. Everyone can add to it in real time. I'm like, okay, we're going to purposely step back. And we're going to say, how does this align with biblical values? How does this align with what the Bible says we should be doing when it comes to resolving conflict? How we should be building community? How does this align with our Adventist educational philosophy? Are we in alignment with the things that we're here saying that we're going to do? And then we make tweaks, and we always make tweaks. So taking that step back. In the first class, I also give my students, if we're blended people in the classroom, have an option if they want to write it on a 3x5 note card that I provide. Or online, it's actually through email. I don't create a Dropbox for it in Learning Hub or anything like that because I want to make sure that there's that personal kind of touch, not a Dropbox. There's something in K-12 education called I Wish My Teacher Knew, and I've been applying it. So basically it's just saying, what do I wish that my teacher knew? And I provide the example of what do I wish my students knew. So I model it, and they get to know me a little bit. So I'll tell them, I wish that you knew that I'm a single mom of a high needs child. And so when there's times that when I'm with you, I'm 100% with you. And then there's when I'm not with you, or it's not office hours, we need to make an appointment, and please don't text me after 8 o'clock at night. That's my time to be mom. So that I can model for you what it means to live a well-ordered life, right? What balance looks like, because that's our Adventist philosophy, but we have a really hard time living it, right? So we talk about how not being accessible 24/7 is actually in alignment with faith and our values. And so in that I wish my teacher knew, I always invite them to send me a request for prayer. And 30 minutes before class, I'm never available. That's my time that I block out. Every single time that the class meets, 30 minutes before class, I pray. And I pray for the things that they've left in the cards. And then I ask God, hey God, is there anything else that they haven't told me that I need to pray for? And whatever he brings to mind, I pray for. So that my heart, my mind, my space is ready with those students. And then we do worship, and so we talked about that. And this whole kind of idea is that we journey together. In my courses, just as Glennis was talking about, we have adult learners, right? They have their own lived experience. Many of them are in classrooms or have had some classroom experience. And so I just begin classes, and as a part of our social contract, I share with them, hey, I happen to know a little bit more than you about this content area that I'm teaching you, but you happen to know a lot more about other things. And those other things impact how we go about doing this class. So we're gonna be a professional learning community, and we're gonna grow together. And, you know, you're gonna be able to contribute, we're better when you're here. We miss you when you're not. And that has received really good feedback in the fact that people felt comfortable, they felt valued, their contributions were meaningful. And then they can talk about their context in which they are working, which they are then trying to live out not only the content, but the spiritual practices and development within whatever environment they're working. That means that we have so many cultures, and many of our teachers that we're training work with so many different cultures, that we can do our best to be culturally responsive and culturally competent. The reality is that it's an impossible task to be truly competent in every culture. So being culturally humble, asking questions, not just assuming, and not just having somebody speak for their culture, but speak for themselves. And recognize that we're individuals that have collective histories, collective traumas, etc. And then building it into our course and curriculum, right? So I have a course that I teach in curriculum theorizing. So we look at how do we go about theorizing from multiple perspectives. Theorizing as an act of faith. Theorizing as a rebellious act. Theorizing as all of these different things. And so we look at theorizing through these multiple lenses, and they choose a current educational topic that they're interested in. And they may say, okay, I'm gonna look at trauma-informed practice, or I'm gonna look at gender-specific education, or I'm gonna look at whatever the issue is, right? And they say, okay, how would that particular way of theorizing answer this question? And then at the end of towards the end of the course, they have to develop their own theory. And as a part of that assignment, they have to identify how their worldview has influenced their theory development. So things like that are some examples. Thank you so much.
Can you share some examples with us from the seminary religious education perspective?
Well, thank you so much, Linus, and thank you so much for this presentation. Yeah, that's to my mind, you know, one of the most important subjects what's happening here. I'm looking from the, okay, basically I'm teaching theology courses, you know, different, you know, like prophets, blah, blah, and so on. And you know, in theology, if you know all the doctrines, you see, and there is no ethical, how to say, application, it's zero value. It's zero value. And to my mind, my philosophy is it may be a little bit different from, how to say, many philosophies, but I think, okay, I am looking, okay, one step back, I'm looking at students, you know, like little change, like children. And my focus is that they would grow spiritually. You see, that they, at the very end, when the end really will come, that they would be in the place where they should be, you see. And that is the question, is the how, functional question, what can I do, you know, and so on. And basically what I am trying to do, I am trying to use every opportunity to, how to say, to focus their attention to Christ, as we saw here, these concepts Dr. Glynis showed, you know, there behind every concept there is one ocean, big ocean. And I am trying, you know, to use every opportunity to lead them closer to Christ. So it sounds a little bit paradoxically, you are teaching theology, and at the same time you are trying to lead to God, you know. There is some kind of dissonance, you know, something paradoxical. But it is, you know, because the students that come with, that is different topic. All the possible backgrounds. And when you read some of their essays, you know, about their past, you don't know even know what to say. And as you mentioned, you know, different cultures, especially like lately I had two atheists, and one was especially, how to say, aggressive, you know. But well, that's another talk, but the end was good. And this year was very tough. For example, There were suicides I had to deal with because I lost, lots of funerals of deaths, as never before. In fact, it was one of the hardest semesters, the last one. But okay, what I'm doing practically, for example, I'm sending out these Sabbath greetings, happy Sabbath, every week regularly. It doesn't matter. I'm not interested. Okay, who are you? Are you Buddhist? Are you, whatever? Are you Lutheran? Are you? My task is to expose you to the truth. What you are going to do is another matter. But results are very, very good. Simply, okay, on every Friday in the morning I am sending out message. And of course there is also some challenge questions and so on. I did know that.
No trouble, no, that's good.
Yeah, and then, okay, for example, let's say funerals. I know somebody has died. I'm sending out condolences. Very focused, Christ-focused message with a hope. And in fact, I am planning, starting with this semester, to do something different, to add also birthdays, because it's very easy to do. Let's say I have in class 20 students, let's say semester 3 months, okay? Well, how many people can have birthdays? 4, 5, maybe. Somehow again, this spiritual emphasis to give, you see? And that is what I'm trying to do all the time, because what good is they have technical knowledge, and they don't have Christ, they have no hope, they have no future. That's my basic question, that's my approach how I'm looking at this, yeah. Very briefly, yeah. So sorry for taking time.
No, and
Yeah.
I'm delighted, and without even asking what he would share, he's gotten to the point I have learned to value. We have dealt with some many, many difficult student situations, and what I realize as a student service director for online students is they don't have a
The mic may not be on.
university
Is it on?
network that
It's
they
on.
have outside of the current teachers and our student service officer in dealing with some of these angry cases, and that I just have prayed, thanking God, Pastor Alex, and the way he responds, affirming, and always leading them on to Christ. So that role of teacher, now, just to context here, he is dealing with seminary and undergrad classes that are all asynchronous, okay? So she has synchronous classes where there's some more group interaction, but the importance when you're doing asynchronous of being present, accessible, warm, and responsive makes that spiritual nurture. And so I really appreciate what you do.
I texted the person running the live stream to see if they can check on it.
Dr. Ledesma, come and share us a
I'm
few
doing it
examples
here.
for 5 minutes or so from our leadership.
I'm the one she timed.
Lynn?
Maybe she knows I'm really passionate
I've
about
got our
this.
goal is then, and then Dr. Padman, and then we can have time where everyone in this room has valuable stories too. After these 2 more, you'll have some idea. So thank you for sharing.
I was so excited when I got the email from Dr. Bradfield about this. There are 3 things that I'd like to share with you, 3 very easy things that I do. First, to put contents, I work with school leaders, educational leaders, whether you're a school principal, a superintendent of school, a director of education, a union director, and I work with them globally online. So, and I work with them within the Seventh-day Adventist Church and outside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, because our programs are accredited. We are very attractive to the mainstream public. The first thing that I want to share from my heart is that you can't give what you don't have. Each and every one of us has a calling that God has placed upon our hearts. And it's how we will embrace that calling. And so when I'm invited by the seminary to teach pastors how to collaborate with their principals, I jump at the opportunity because this is such a fervent desire of mine. So when I walk into the office every day, and a few years ago I made this for my colleagues, they all have them on their walls. I made 4x6 cards, and I put this passage from Ellen White. Consecrate yourself to God in the morning. Make this your very first work. Let your prayer be, take me, O Lord, as holy God. I laid all my plans at thy feet. Use me today in thy service. Abide with me, and let all thy work be wrought in thee. This is a daily matter. Each morning consecrate yourself to God for that day. Surrender all your plans to him to be carried out or given up as his providence shall indicate. Thus day by day you may be given your life into the hands of God, and thus your life will be molded more and more after the life of Christ. So I have this right by my computer, and before I even turn on my computer in my office, I read that Bible verse and I pray over my computer and my planner, with my hand on my planner. There's nothing special about my hand, but it's just like whatever happens today, whether it's a student that's upset, whether it's a colleague that will get on my very last nerve, or whatever it is, Lord, just please help me to be like you. And when you look at your ministry through the eyes of God, through the lenses of Jesus' eyes, everything changes. You don't believe me? Try it. Read that Bible that both of my own line. Pray over your work for the day, and you will see how different that day will be. The second thing that I do for our students is that right from the beginning of the class at orientation, whether they're faith-based students or non-denominational students, I assign every student to partner with another student, and I do this purposely. If I know they know each other, I purposely separate them. And I make them in charge of the spiritual application for a given week. So they're 15 weeks in the class, sometimes they're 2 and 3 because that's how many students are in my classes. And they're in charge of the spiritual application, and I call it the spiritual application because I want them to choose the key takeaway that they want to share with their students, their peers, that week. It has to be connected to the lesson at hand. So I tell them that we're going to do this, and then I ask them if anyone is going to feel uncomfortable being a part of sharing the spiritual application, and that's what we call it, to the lesson. And they always participate. They have to work together, and by the Thursday of the previous week, they have to give me the spiritual application that I will upload for the next week. I only correct for grammar and for spelling. I don't change any of the contents. I just lay it out how they lay it out so that I am respectful of their thoughts, their beliefs, and their desires. I wanted to share one. This was for the class I just taught this summer, SDA leadership, and the lesson that week, spiritual application promises the amazing grace of redemption and education, and that was, they both gave me permission, Rosemary Bechtel and Angela Bonds. When reflecting on the book Education Chapter 4, by sin, man was shut out from God, except from the plan of redemption and eternal separation from God. The darkness of unending night would have been this. Through the Savior's sacrifice, communion with God is again made possible under changed conditions. True education is still conformed to the Creator's plan. The plan of Eden's school, Adam and Eve received instruction through direct communion with God. We behold the light of the knowledge of the glory in the face of Christ. Then they shared, this is the last paragraph they wrote, it's a small paragraph. White 1903 states, the great principles of education are unchanged. They stand fast forever and ever. For they are the principles of the character of God to aid the student in comprehending these principles and in entering into the relation with Christ, which will make them controlling power in life. This should be the teacher's first effort and his constant aim. The teacher who accepts the same is in truth a co-worker with Christ, a laborer together with God. Do you accept this aim and truth to co-labor with God daily?
Do you have a link?
Why is the following
Do you have a
statement
link
true?
to the
That's
stream?
them asking the question to elicit this conversation and this dialogue that will ensue throughout the whole week. The final question is, in the highest sense of work of education and the work of redemption are one. As you meditate on the song below, and they have the Celtic women sing Amazing Grace because they have full latitude to do whatever they want. As you meditate on the song below, please reflect upon how you can extend this amazing grace within the school, within your school and your parents, within your students and the staff, and how you yourself can be an authentic leader. This hymn is a great expression of the redemption and salvation available to God for this life and the life after. And so every week, our students have this opportunity to do this, and it's amazing the things that comes out of it. The network that's developed is so strong that when they themselves are going through crisis, they can lean on each other. Remember, these are school leaders, so they can't call their superintendent. They can't call their chair of the board and say, I'm really struggling in a lot of ways, because they see that as represented by failure. But they have a network that they've developed here that is safe and that they know they can count on God. And last thing that I do is prayer. And it was stated before, but I want my students to see that I am there for them, like you, in every detail, whether it's a death, whether it's happiness. If you go into my office, you have grandbaby pictures that I have before I had my first granddaughter this fall. Because when the students have babies, I have them send me pictures and I put them up like if they're my babies. If they get married, I'm invited to their weddings. It's just amazing. So I have all these grandchildren that are really not my biological grandchildren. But when Dr. Bradfield asked me to do this presentation for my students, because I do the same thing that Dr. Garcia does, is to pray before I even am in front of my students. On the computer, because it's very difficult to engage them when you're not physically there. And I've been praying for them, and I got this text from one of my students, and this is what she said. Hi, Dr. Ledesma. I'm reaching out to you to ask you if you would pray for Maya. She had a very bad fall and has to have surgery tomorrow morning. And then I wrote back, this makes my heart very, very sad. I will be praying for you and especially for precious Maya. And then I ask her how she felt, and she responds. But then yesterday afternoon, I get this. Maya's surgery went well this morning. We came home, had a good rest period, and she's up and eating. Thanks for praying for her. And I write back, praise God, with a heart emoji and the praying hands emoji. You will never know the influence that you have had upon your students except when we get to the kingdom. So remember that calling that God has placed upon your heart, and even at Andrews, learn to lead like Jesus.
Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting the flow, No, I so pleased what you said, about praying, because that is a very powerful indicator, I have received also a bunch of these, can you pray for this, can you pray for this? It means there's mutual bonding, you see, they respect you and they rely upon you, they are looking for help. That's powerful, what you, thank you so much.
Right. I never ever begin a conversation with any of my students, any of our students, without beginning with prayer and concluding with prayer. I always start with prayer, or I let them start, and then I can let them conclude with prayer so that they know that this is a mutual relationship. And so because of that, they know. And I think we do a lot of the similar things. I have a Bible verse every week for my class. I have a Sabbath message for them. I tell them about how drained I feel and how thankful I am for the Sabbath. So I do those things as well. But it's just really connecting on a spiritual level so that they know that we're here beyond the class.
And I want you to know, this is, many students, I think, call you Mama Janet. Mama Ledesma, for a reason. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Ledesma. And Dr. Opala has some interesting perspectives now too, including our sciences. Tell us a little more. I'll put the slide on for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bradfield. All right. When Dr. Bradfield asked me if I wanted to share something a couple of days ago, on my desk, I had a whole bunch of papers and deadlines. And I just jumped at the opportunity. Just because I enjoy integration of faith into my classrooms. This is something that's central to my lectures. I've been lecturing for the past 30-some years, and with time, I have learned what it means to really integrate faith into teaching. Initially, when I started many years ago, I would just offer a prayer before my lecture, and then I would do the lecture, and that was it. Okay, this is an Adventist school, because I also taught at state schools, and you can pray, you can share. So those of you who have taught at state colleges, you will know what a privilege it is to teach in an Adventist school and to pray with students. I teach several courses, health courses, and biology, toxicology, environmental health. And I'm kind of biased to say that my courses are the number one for integration of faith in a direct relationship. And I've taken only 2 examples to show you what I do. Just one more thing. In my classes, in my online classes, the very first section is a thought or a Bible verse, and that is the central theme of my lecture. For example, I teach a course called toxicology. That's the study of poisons. And the very first introduction, I have this verse from the book of Job, arrows dipped in poison, if you recall that verse from the Bible. The toxicology is a very old discipline, and the term is derived from that verse from the Bible. It's arrows dipped in poison. I think that's what it's in the Bible. And so every lecture has that thought, because it's not a face-to-face, and you can't really just do devotionals. So it's right there. Also, I have an online chapel where we pray. The prayer is written out, because we can't literally offer, prayers. So those are a couple of things. And then you will see it's integrated throughout. However, I'm going to just share 2 examples. One, again, from toxicology. I was teaching about the poisons, deadly poisons about snakes. So how do I integrate faith into this lecture? I'm going to start with a question. Designed to kill in a fallen world. And I'm going to ask you this question. Who designed the snake to kill? You have 3 options. Is it God? Is it the devil? Or is it evolution? What do you think? Designed to kill. We all know the snake is designed to kill. Who designed it to kill? I want the answers from you. How many of you think it's evolution? Please show your hands. Evolution. How many of you think it's the devil? None. How many of you think it's God? Only 1, 2? All the others? Okay. Well, if you look at going back to Genesis 1:30, when God made the snakes and all the animals, all the beasts, they were all vegetarians, right? So we do have 2 scientists here who said God designed it. So God designed them to be a vegetarian. But what happened after fall? There was a lot of changes. The vegetarian snakes became deadly poisonous snakes. The mamba, the black mamba, the most deadliest snake. Lions, tigers, all of these, the fangs, the carnivorous nature. And then I asked my students, did God design this? And then they're all wondering, and they have their own answers, and I kind of enjoy their answers for some time. And then I showed them the poisonous apparatus in snake. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, the next one. It's very, very complicated. And somebody said evolution. I had an evolutionary scientist who's a herpetologist, and every time he began to study about these complex organs, he was an atheist, didn't believe in God. He would just walk away from there. He would be like, okay, I'm looking at the body of the snake, The lung is going from one end of the snake to the other. There's only one lung. The kidneys are lined up one behind the other. And the stomach and even the vertebrae are so flexible. How could random mutations create such an animal? And then if you look at the poisonous apparatus, it has a gland. It has a little canal through which the poison flows. And then it gets into the fang, which is a bony structure. Within the bony structure is a little canal through which the poison is injected. And this poison can be injected miles across towards its prey. The snake can also sense how the weight of its prey, even when it's at a distance, by the heat that's generated. And so this atheist, he could not take it. Ultimately, he became a creation scientist when he began to study these complex organs in animals. And so then I tell, and then he wrote an article about this particular thing. I don't want to read, but you will notice that just the process of injecting the poison involves a whole bunch of muscles, all of them articulated in such a manner to bite our prey, to prey. And so he said, it's God. There's no way evolution can come up with this apparatus. And then you'll say, okay, so God, why did God do it? Because there's another verse in the Bible that says God created everything and he sustains them. God sustains these creatures because there was another person who said, no, God did not create snakes. Those are creatures of this earth, the cursed world. And then the scientist says, God created this apparatus. It's a defense organ for the snakes. They have nothing else. And the purpose of that is for them to get their food. You know, it so happens that we are in their way and we get bitten and we are dead. But, and then and then he said, we don't know. We can't, after sin, a lot of things happened. But those of us who believe in the Bible, we know that if God sustains them, he just sustains them. We don't know whether he put the genes within the snake before creation for this apparatus, for the fangs, because he knew that one day there's going to be sin, and in a fallen world, the snakes will need it. We don't know whether the genes were already there. We don't know whether as soon as Eve sinned, whether all of this changed, and suddenly you're seeing snakes with this apparatus. But those questions will be answered when we see Jesus. But I do appreciate those two scientists here who had the correct answer. God designed it, God. And why? There was a purpose. And same thing with all of the carnivorous animals. So this is how I don't take this much time. It's our very start. So even when I'm preparing my lectures, I spend a lot of time to look over that lecture and to say, let me connect the central theme from the Bible. And so I take something from the Bible or from Ellen G. White, and that's going to be my main devotional. And the other example I wanted to share with you is I teach a course called Environmental Health. And I know another professor also, he teaches environmental science, which is a little different from environmental health. So this is a grad course, and throughout the quarter, we have topics. Each topic, we talk about water and the state of our drinking water, or just water in general, how polluted it is these days. We talk about solid waste, we talk about climate change, and we cover almost every topic pertaining to the environmental health. And at the end of the course, of course, we will be incorporating a lot of Bible texts in it. And at the end, we some of the Bible texts that we come across within the lectures are, Isaiah 51:6. It says, "The earth shall wax old," which the other professor also used. And Revelation 16:8, the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was allowed to scorch people. All of us know about the changes that we are experiencing right now with climate change. And a lot, even now, right, this summer in Michigan, I've been here for 7 years, and I feel like this is like the hottest summer. Each year it's becoming more and more hotter, and the climate is just wacky. People can't even predict what's going to happen. And so at the end, we watch a lot of videos too, a planet, endangered planet and everything. In the end, I tell my students, you have a final exam, and the part one is your reflection of the entire course and how you can relate that to end time events. Do you believe in it? And so that's the paper they produce, and I just love reading that paper. At least 90% of them believe so much in end time, what's going to happen to the planet, just looking at this, because you can't deny facts. You cannot deny in facts. So NASA is almost like the top source if you want to get any information about climate change, and they have been tracking what's going on with carbon dioxide levels. And you can see it's an increase. There's an increase in carbon dioxide and increase in global temperatures, one by one since, I think, in the 80s. 1980, sorry, I don't have. Anyway, so, and then you also see ice sheets. The glaciers are melting and the sheets are just breaking. Sometime back, the sheet was as big as the entire city of New York, just floating, breaking and floating. And then you have sea level. Sea level is going up. They believe certain parts like Miami and LA, they think that those are going to be submerged pretty soon. And then the warming of the ocean. All these are facts. I show them the graphs, and finally in their paper, they are so convinced that we are at the end. And they say that, you know, the Bible is the ultimate truth, and so their faith strengthens. And so those are that's how I integrate faith in my lectures, and I'm sure you all do. And I would love to hear how you all do it.
Thank you for sharing diverse ideas, diverse disciplines. I picked up something that I found valuable, finding key essential questions, like who designed the snake's venom. That really could start a discussion with disagreements. So those key questions can lead in whatever topic you're studying. It might be a connection once a week, not necessarily every single lesson, but in a topic there. So that is the end of this section of sharing some examples. It's now time for you to share some with the person next door to you. I'm going to leave it on that because I'll end in the last 5 minutes with a couple ideas of what we could do as a team beyond just your class. But for the next 15 minutes, I'd like you to pair and share. So if there's someone just sitting next to you, maybe here with Seung Kwan, you could share. Reflect. What did you hear that might be valuable to you in your work? Maybe the librarians you could share too in your work there. And what's an idea you toying with in making faith space? I like the idea of being a space maker. How do you create space for discussions in what you're teaching this year? So 10, 15 minutes. You don't have to report back. Just share between each other, and I'll just walk around and I might pick up some ideas to share. And then at 5:02, so there's only 10, 13 minutes left, 5:02, I want to share a couple things at the end. Okay. And if you're listening in live, you take perhaps 10 minutes to sit and write out some ideas. I'll be ending with some resources you can share, but let's go ahead and chat.
I'm very sorry, I missed this PowerPoint slides. I have to prepare.
You can just leave it on because it'll get edited out. As long as
simplistic, and when you're not enough time to go into it, you don't want to simplify or
Yeah.
make your topic simplistic.
if you were coming back or not. But if no one tells you to come back, then because they didn't tell me who's live streaming both, but I can ask my boss. I can ask my
Wait,
boss.
250, right?
Let me ask my boss if someone is supposed to be live streaming the second.
I think there's a one room. There's no session for the afternoon.
Gotcha. Okay. If I hear something, I'll text you.
Yes.
But otherwise,
Okay, sure.
just do what you were told. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If they didn't say anything to you, then that's fine.
Yeah, let me. We have the posters. Let me check. 250. We do have something afternoon at 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you need my laptop, just text me so I can
Okay.
come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank